it's 100% fact that the brain is completely capable of improving and also declining. Neuroplasticity isn't always positive. It is a wonderful thing if you use it properly, but also it can change in negative ways if you're doing negative things, right?
Alexandra Dennison is a cognitive consultant who helps people of all ages rewire their brains and improve how they think, learn, and function.
Some people are still operating under the belief that the brain is not changeable, especially after a certain age. Even if you're 90, you can still improve your brain if you know what to do. We can make new brain cells every day.
No matter what, if we provide the right stimulus to the brain, it can still learn. It can still form new connections. I mean, this is what mindfulness supports as well. It's based on neuroplasticity. The brain is capable of changing. This is what's hopeful. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pause to Elevate with Dr. Kasim Al-Mashat, where I share conversations about psychology, mindset, and mindfulness so you can better understand your mind to transform your life. I am so thrilled to share today's conversation with Alexandra Dennison. She's a cognitive consultant who helps people of all ages use neuroplastic methods to genuinely improve how your brain functions. She guides clients towards stronger skills in emotional regulation, including anxiety, depression, impulsivity, inattention, as well as sensory and processing difficulties. Unlike traditional compensatory approaches, her work focuses on non-invasive techniques that help the brain change. We could all use that, help the brain change at a foundational level. Alexandra consults globally, supporting people who want to move beyond coping and into real, lasting improvements. So friends, join us today if you want to better understand your brain, your nervous system, and discover real pathways to change, including how neuroplasticity can make life feel easier, calmer, and more empowered. But first, Alexandra, a warm welcome to you to the Pause to Elevate podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Thank you so much for joining us. I talking about the brain. I really want to get into your brain, and you have so much knowledge and expertise. So there's so many questions I have for you. But first, I wonder, what brought you to this deep dedication and lifelong interest in the brain and becoming a cognitive consultant? How did it all begin for you?
I call it my past incarnation. I worked in more straightforward education. And I always wondered, was there more that we could do? I found that there was a big puzzle about why people were able to learn or not learn, why people were more anxious, not as anxious, all those different kinds of things. And when I was living in Vancouver, I found out about a cognitive program that was basically just a school for cognitive exercises. So for people to improve their brain function. And the school actually works with children all the way up through adults. It's called a school, but most of them are centers, actually. And I was really quite fascinated by this. And so I began my foray into learning about the brain in 2006. And I basically started taking lots of courses, reading everything I could, watching tons of podcasts, and worked with that program for 10 years and then went on my own to work with other neuroplastic methods as I learned that there were lots and lots of different ways that we can improve our brain and nervous system.
See, here's such an important organ, the brain. But somehow, we think it's like just this thing, in my forehead, top of the head. And, I'm just kind of stuck with it. This is how it is. And what would you say to someone who thinks their brain is not going to change for whatever reason? And, people say, this is just how I am. In all ages, 30s, 40s, 50s, I guess that's how I am.
That's right. And I hear that. Yeah. All the time. People say, well, that's just the way I'm hardwired. But there's actually no such thing as hardwiring in a brain. And that's what's so amazing about it, right? When you start to learn about the capabilities of brain change, to me, it's amazing, right? The brain is capable of changing throughout life. In other words, even if you're 90, you can still improve your brain if you know what to do, right? If you have specific, focused approach to it.
So this is actually very encouraging because this means in all ages, no matter what, if we provide the right stimulus to the brain, it can still learn. it can still form new connections. Can you say more about that? Like how, what kind of things? So someone comes to you and they're struggling, let's say, with anxiety or struggling with mood or inattention. And how would you approach that with them and supporting them and understanding, this is not a life sentence. You can work with your brain.
Yeah. So usually what happens is I'll ask people to give me a whole history, right? I'll ask for any previous assessments they've had. So I don't do the assessing. I review any assessments, because usually if someone is coming to me, they've already had a lot of struggles, whatever it is, whether it be mood, or whether it be learning, or whether it be a traumatic brain injury or some kind of a genetic thing. They've already been through lots of testing, assessments, analysis. They don't really need more testing. They need is for someone to explain to them, what does this mean for me, right? And a lot of times they'll come with me with lots of diagnoses, but I always say to them, I'm not really concerned with labels or diagnoses. I'm interested in the information that it provides me, but I don't really get attached to the diagnoses, because regardless of whether it's genetic or traumatic brain injury, or you just happen to have trouble with something, we know that the brain is capable of improving. So what I'm looking at is, someone says to me, for example, something basic. Well, I say basic, but I have dyslexia. So I'll say to them, okay, well, tell me what that looks like for you, because it's not the same for everybody. So some people will say, well, I can't spell, but I can understand everything I read. Someone else might say, I can read really well. I can decode text, but I cannot understand anything I read. So that's two completely different areas of the brain. Well, more than two, but let's say one is more prefrontal cortex, which is your higher thinking. Do I understand what I read? And the other one is the back of the brain in the visual cortex, for example. So I'm always looking at what is the information. I want to dig further with that person and ask them, what does this look like? Or if it's anxiety, tell me what does anxiety look like for you? What brings it on? And that will give me more information about where I will direct them to help them improve those outcomes.
So really, you're using the diagnosis as a tool to communicate. I mean, I think this is, sometimes people misunderstand diagnosis, like it's a label, stuck with, it's a concrete thing. I am this. I am anxiety. Rather, it's a constellation of symptoms. And when we say the word, diagnosed with anxiety disorder, general anxiety disorder, it's just a constellation of symptoms. Or you're saying dyslexia, it's constellation. And then you're asking the person, well, what is your experience of this constellation of symptoms? And then you go from there. So I guess it's a starting point then for your work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And actually, that's a really good point, because oftentimes what people think is they get very excited. They finally have a diagnosis. And I'm like, to them, that's the end point. But then they're stuck with this diagnosis. And that relief of having the diagnosis doesn't last that long, because then you're like, but nothing's really changed.
Yes.
But from a neuroplastic perspective, the fact that the brain is capable of improving, we're looking at, okay, so we're starting with that diagnosis, and now where can we go from there to improve whatever that diagnosis is, or those diagnoses are telling us, right?
Right. So I guess there's like a double-edged sword. Like on one hand, it can be very validating. And I work with clients as well, one-on-one, and do groups. And sometimes it can be so helpful to get a diagnosis. But the double-edged sword of that is when people see themselves as that.
Right.
Like get it, but it can be very, it could be a relief, like normalizing. This is what's going on for me. Okay, now that we know, let's say it's post-traumatic stress disorder, a trauma reaction. Okay, well, now we know what it is. Like, here's the symptoms diagnosed. Let's work with it, because the diagnosis, and this is so important what you're saying, the diagnosis doesn't provide the solution. Like, it's not like now you're diagnosed, it's resolved. Right? Like it's not. It's just now we have a label on your symptoms.
Yeah. Exactly. And neuroplasticity to me is so hopeful. Like a lot of times people I work with say it's the first time that they've experienced hope, because they see that there's a possibility for change.
Yes. What is neuroplasticity? Can you describe it for folks? And many of us may have heard about it, but there's misunderstanding of actually what it really is. So can you help us understand neuroplasticity?
Mm-hmm. So neuroplasticity is a complicated word, and a lot of times people are, just are sort of afraid of that. What does that actually mean, right? And so it's the word neurons, which are brain cells, and plasticity. But to me, when I hear about plasticity, it's a little confusing because I always think of plastic as being rigid.
Right.
So, but it's actually not plasticity in that sense. It's like malleable. That's what it's supposed to mean. Plasticity in the sense of being able to be more malleable, like rubber, not like plastic in a sense. So it means that the brain is capable of changing. It's not rigid. It's not something that's a rigid thing. And so we have neuroplasticity, and we also have things like neurogenesis, which means that we can make new brain cells every day, which is also really interesting in mainly in our hippocampus, which is where memories are formed.
Yeah.
But this is also fairly new information. I mean, when I say fairly new, it's like 25 years old, but most people don't know that, right? Some people are still operating under the belief that the brain is not changeable, especially after a certain age, right? But the science shows us it's not a theory, it's 100% fact that the brain is completely capable of improving and also declining, right? If you don't do anything and you abuse it,
right,
it's going to decline. Neuroplasticity isn't always positive, right? People think, oh, neuroplasticity is a wonderful thing. It is a wonderful thing if you use it properly, but also it can, the brain can also change in negative ways if you're doing negative things, right? It can cause you can perfect your attention, or you can become more inattentive if you do things that make your brain more inattentive, right? So, but basically the brain, the neurons of the brain are capable of changing. So what that means is they can make new connections. They can they make stronger connections. So we actually see that when we can look into brains, now we have brain imaging, which when the program that I originated with, the woman who developed that, when she developed it more on theory because there was no brain imaging in the 70s when she started.
Before functional MRIs?
That's right.
Right.
So now with her program, they have done functional MRIs, and now we can see, we're not hypothesizing, we can see that when you do certain things, there are certain connections that take place. The brain gets more active in certain areas. You even have more different matter in the brain that changes. So we can actually see that the brain is changing.
I really like how you put it. Like, it's neuroplasticity can go both ways. Which means if we do absolutely nothing, like the brain doesn't just stay static. Like, some things get better and some things get worse if you don't use it, you lose it. That applies to the brain too, right? Like, if we're not challenging the brain in right ways, we begin to lose some of these capacities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here's neuroplasticity. So one of the things that people often hear, and it's very kind of popular saying, what fires together wires together. And that's also a little sometimes understood and misunderstood. What does that mean, actually?
Yeah, and actually that was invented by a Canadian, I think his name is Thomas Hebb. So basically, even when you do something like sneezing, so like when I sneeze, I tend to sneeze 6 times in a row. It's my neurons. They said Alexandra is sneezing and hachoo, 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 hachoo. I mean, it's a funny thing. My neurons are saying she's sneezing 6 times because that's what she does. And the more she does it, the more she's going to do it. So it's like, I would say it's like when you walk through the woods the first time and there's no path. There's no path, and you're going through and you're tromping your feet through and you're breaking a few branches and you're going along the way. And the next day you come back and you might try to find that path and you don't really see too much, maybe a branch here or there that's broken. If you do that every day, that's like your neurons taking that pathway. And you go over and over and over again. Eventually, you actually see that path. And now you leave that path for a few weeks and you come back and the path is still there because you have done it over and over again. So the neurons that wire together. So you're doing it over and over and over again. Your steps are your neurons firing, in a sense, and you're wiring in that pathway. But if you don't do it, like with neuroplasticity, you can't go to the gym once a week to get the effects, right?
Right.
You have to do it often enough for the path to hold. And once that path holds, they fire together, they wire together, and the path stays consistent, right? That you actually have a pathway. So a lot of times the mistake that people make is they don't stick with something long enough for that to take place, for those neurons to actually wire together.
Yeah.
And that new pathway, right?
It's time for a quick little update. You know, a few months ago, 2.5% of you who are watching this content were subscribed to this channel. I'm so grateful to you. You helped us move it to 20%. However, if we do the math, that still leaves us 80% of you have not subscribed. Please help me change that. Go ahead and press that subscribe button. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the content. Yeah, it's like, as you're describing, it's like grooves form, these deep grooves, and but it does require work to develop these grooves. It's interesting you say that, because I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction, and you know, one of the things that got me on board from the start was, okay, does this actually have an impact on the brain? You know, and that's actually one of the biggest reasons that I got pulled into it myself, and, you know, going through my own struggles. But oh wow, this actually changes the brain, and this is one of the first times for me I got so curious about neuroplasticity. I'm like, oh, like you meditate for 8 weeks and this, and the brain changes, like it changes in terms of functional aspects of the brain, and the regions of the brain, the size change. Like, wow, this is not static. So yeah, so like I said, it's hopeful, but it requires work, and not everyone's willing to meditate every day or most days, right? But if you do,
I came to mindfulness almost the backwards way, right?
Yeah.
Well, I also had my own journey, as we all do with our anxiety, because life is difficult. And I started with yoga practicing, and I came through it that way. But then I also did your mindfulness-based stress reduction course. But prior to that, I had already, I had been leading mindfulness in my cognitive classrooms with my adults.
Right.
Because I had been reading about the research, which was that it can improve not only mood, but also attention, executive function. Right. So that was really important, because you wanted to do everything. We wanted to do everything we could on top of the program that we were offering to improve the way the brain was working. And rather than going straight toward medication, if we could do it non-invasively, how great is that? Right.
Right. Exactly. And there's interesting research on that too, in terms of, you know, comparing medication. Sometimes we need medication, but it's interesting how it's as effective in the latest research showing as medication without the side effects and reducing symptoms of anxiety.
That's correct.
So, and actually the research is so deep and thorough in so many areas, like mood and pain and stress, and but again, it's based on neuroplasticity. The brain is capable of changing, and this is why I find your work so fascinating, because you work with that hope. Like, I think your title should be Hope Consultant.
I love that.
You know what I mean? Like, because that's what you're helping people with.
Yeah.
So, there's so many things I want to ask you about working with the nervous system. So, can you say, like, what is self-regulation? What is emotional regulation? Why does it even matter to work with a nervous system? I mean, we have one, we get stressed, but why is it relevant?
And again, it's interesting because, of course, we all have our own journeys, and you know, way back when my children were little, I didn't even know I didn't. If somebody said, "Are you anxious?" I'd be like, "Anxious? Like, what does that mean?" Right? To recognize it, right? But our nervous systems were developed many millennia ago, back in time before human beings. Actually, you know, we had reptiles. So we had reptiles that basically their nervous systems was what they had to guide their life, and their nervous system was telling them if something was safe or not safe. So our nervous system is a personal surveillance system. It tells us whether we're safe or not safe. That's its job, basically, right? And before we had brains, we had a nervous system. And when thinking wasn't safe, we would freeze like a turtle in its shell. That's what's with
Mm.
reptiles. They only have that capacity.
For protection, yeah.
Yeah, for protection. So our nervous system is designed to keep us safe. It is really below the cognitive level, below our thinking brain.
Mm.
So I came to working more with that because when I was trying to help people with maybe cognition, everyone came to me with an anxiety disorder and inattention because they're so stressed out by the fact that they're struggling so much, right?
Right.
So no matter what program or therapy or neuromodulation device you provide them, if their nervous system is stuck on high alert due to some kind of trauma or life experiences, you're not going to get the optimal results. So then I really dove deep more into nervous system and its response, and it's very linked to also mindfulness, the brain and the nervous system. They're the same basically.
Right.
Right. So the nervous system is designed to keep you safe, and that system is always telling us safe or not safe. And we have to work below the cognitive level with that because our nervous system is that below the cognitive level. So not conscious thinking, right? So if you're doing a lot of talk therapy and you're not finding it being effective, it could be that you're not ready for that yet because there's something in your nervous system. And once you work with the nervous system more, that talk there could be more effective or may not be even necessary.
Right. So there's something beyond just words. And with trauma, it's the same thing. And a lot of life experiences, it's an injury to the nervous system. Like what happens to the nervous system? So there's something that you're naming. The nervous system becomes on high alert. And when it's constant on high alert, it affects the brain's functioning. So it's the brain is not going to be in optimal functioning when we're constantly burned out, high alert, revved up nervous system. Is that right?
Correct. Or it could be totally shut down. That's the other part of it.
Right. Yeah. So then how do you work with someone who you recognize, they're in overwhelm mode? I mean, a lot of the listeners in this podcast are, highly functioning, but there's this challenge, it's overwhelm, stress in life. How do you work with that?
It's interesting. So I'm a consultant. So really what I offer mostly is information based on your situation. I recommend you see Dr. Al-Mashat because he's really good with mindfulness and he's a psychologist and he can help you with some of this, right? For example, or if you have dyslexia, I might suggest certain things for that or whatever it happens to be. But I do offer one therapy. And the reason I offer this one therapy was because when I was finding that this trauma that's stored in our nervous system was so overwhelming that the brain couldn't function as well to receive anything I sent their way, basically, I realized, we have to regulate people first. But talking to them about it, I'm not a psychologist, even though I have a lot of background. I have a background in psychology, but again, it's this talk therapy at the thinking level, and you're having to get into the nervous system first. So, I can tell them, meditation is good. Maybe you should take an MBSR course, but sometimes they can't. Some people can't even close their eyes and breathe. It actually makes them more anxious. They can't settle, right? So what do? I found out about this protocol, the Safe and Sound protocol that I had mentioned to you, developed by a doctor who's been working in the field of trauma for over 40 years. And it actually is one of the therapies that can help to regulate the nervous system without you doing any talk therapy, right? It's and they say it's opening up the pathway so that other therapies can be more effective. And so that's one of the things I recommend. There are other sound therapies, but this one in particular is I really like it. It's very well respected, and it's been all over the world now. A lot of therapists are using, psychologists are implementing it into their work as part of their offerings.
So can you just paint a picture for us? What is that like? Someone comes in and someone has never heard of the Safe and Sound protocol. How do you introduce it? Like, what happens so they get to experience this regulation of the nervous system with this protocol, Safe and Sound protocol?
Well, so most people come to me through as a consultation, and they want to know, what do I do for myself, or my child or my husband or whatever.
Mhm.
And so it's as we unpack this, one of my recommendations would be almost always the first one is let's look at emotional regulation, because there's no point otherwise, right?
Mhm.
And then I'll have suggestions for those kinds of things. There's also, the company itself, they do provide lots of therapists. Like you can go to the Unite website and they will ask you to put in your information, and they can
Mm.
connect you with many, many practitioners around the world who offer safe and sound. It is a remote offering for the most part now.
Mhm.
So you can download an app onto your phone, but you're working closely with a provider. So
Ah,
first,
okay.
I always start with the information session based on what we call polyvagal theory, which this doctor developed, and
Mhm.
explain to them how their nervous system works, what they might notice, and why. So your vagus nerve is the longest nerve in your body, and it's connected to all these organs, right? Your stomach, your heart. So you might suddenly have diarrhea while you're listening, like have to run to the bathroom, and people are like, well, why did that happen to me? And it's because the vagus nerve, through being stimulated through this auditory system, the vagus nerve is
Mm.
connected all the way up into your brain and down into the organs. You might notice your heart beating faster. You might notice your face is flushing.
Mm.
Sometimes people get much more animated because those cranial nerves start activating. So all these things might happen, and understanding the nervous system, looking at polyvagal theory and how it works, helps them understand. And usually people are like, oh my God, now I understand why I feel the way I do and why this happens to me. It answers a lot of questions.
Mm. So you describe actually, I mean, a complex theory, but you make it understandable, relatable. So what do people what sticks with people about polyvagal?
Well, I think starting with the image of the vagus nerve and all the organs it's connected to, I think that's always very
Mm.
eye-opening, right? I think that's helpful. And then starting to understand why my stomach hurts when I'm anxious, or why
Right.
my breathing is funny, when I'm anxious, or, those kinds of things. And starting to notice and to feel into those things and recognize, like they talk about, where's your home? Where's your home? Do you live in that fight flight state? And starting to recognize those states,
Mm.
and people realizing, oh, I never really even stopped to think about what my feelings, my organs were telling me, my breath was telling me. And then once you can recognize it, then you can start to work with it, like with mindfulness, right? Start to be more aware of all those things.
Hmm. I was just thinking about that when you were describing it. I mean, this is what mindfulness supports as well, as gaining awareness of actually recognizing there's something happening in my body. Like, wait a minute, something's happening in my body. Oh, my breathing's changing. Oh, and what am I thinking when I'm breathing changing? What
Mm-hmm.
most of the time we're disconnected from it, right? So there's an important aspect of sensory experience, as John Kabat-Zinn's book is, coming to our senses, like connecting to our
Exactly.
senses.
Exactly. Coming to our senses. What are our
Yeah,
senses? So we get information from our
yeah,
senses, right? Feeling, thinking, not thinking, feeling, seeing, all those
yeah,
things. And most people are not in touch with that. I just want to say when I was doing the MBSR course with you,
yeah.
the second week of the class, there was a woman in the class who came in very agitated the first time, in terms of her. You could see her nervous system was on high alert. She couldn't sit
Mm-hmm.
still. She just kept moving. She was like, you could just tell she was really it was really hard for her to be there. She really wanted to be there. And we went home with our body scan, right?
Yeah, home
And
practice,
the next
meditation.
week
Yeah,
she
yeah,
came back and she said, as I was doing the body scan, I realized I hadn't even felt the middle of my body for years.
yeah,
And so she's doing this body scan and she's like, oh my gosh, there's my stomach, right? She was
yeah.
totally disconnected with herself. And that fact that she had realized that so quickly, I thought was fascinating and hopeful.
So hopeful, because how you described it. What it teaches us, mindfulness, is two things: is awareness of the sensations. So there's attention. We're paying attention with intention. Okay. Oh, here's sensation, but also bringing a certain attitude, and the attitude of just curiosity, kindness, compassion. So we're not getting upset or reactive to, like, oh no, what's wrong with me? Why do I have this sensation? What's wrong? I got to stop it. And that
Hmm.
actually makes it worse. So that
Exactly.
combination is really incredibly powerful. This building curiosity, paying attention, and with very kind attitude. Just over and over, just being present, getting to know the body. Yeah. It surprises people. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And the thing is, one of the things that I also learned more and more about is that a lot of times people, we're not sure if they don't know their emotions, because sometimes what happens is they don't know the words for the emotions. So there was an image that I have that shows you these different, vocabulary that we use for emotions. So you can't develop the vocabulary for emotions if you don't feel them. That's the other thing.
Are you talking about the feeling wheel?
The emotion wheel.
Yeah, emotional wheel. Yeah.
So you can have you'll have sad, happy, angry, that basic emotions. But if you ask them, so what does that feel like in your body? And that's where mindfulness comes into, start paying attention to what does it feel like? Where am I feeling tension? Where am I feeling something fluttering, tightness, nausea, whatever those things are, you have to get, like I always say, your felt feelings, literally.
Yes.
Where do you feel them? And then you can start developing the vocabulary, like it's so important with young children to start with developing the vocabulary that they're not just sad, but you feel a lot, very sad, a little sad, a lot sad. And let's think of what kinds of words we could apply to that. Yeah. And where's that showing up in your body? Because if we don't do that, they can't really, they can't access those emotions or express those emotions, right?
And then it becomes difficult to heal. Like it's very hard to heal something if we don't feel it, if we don't connect with it.
You're just numb.
Numb to it. Totally. Yeah. The same happens, I notice in terms of therapy, the one-on-one work that I do, and using EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing EMDR. That one is a really interesting modality for processing, but beyond just the cognitive level. Like it has a sensory aspect of connecting, okay, what's coming up? What are the thoughts? What are the sensations? And that surprises people because now it's not a logical. And that throws off some people because they come in to therapy like logical. I think this because this happened and this happened. But it's like, it's not a logical processing. It is a nervous system processing. And so when you're saying this, like, yeah, this makes sense why there's so much research as well on EMDR, and it's impacting the nervous system. It's impacting.
And with the Safe and Sound protocol, they work with people. Like a lot of the therapists also offer EMDR, and they have, they're doing different studies on using EMDR and Safe and Sound together, somatic therapies and Safe and Sound together, that kind of thing.
Yes. So back to Safe and Sound. So what does that look like for someone who's curious to go, okay, so I'm interested, I'll find someone who does Safe and Sound work. So what happens with that? Like someone's like, okay, still don't like, what happens? Do you ring bowls? Do you
so you're just listening to music. But okay, so music is the delivery system, but it's not about the music. There are various playlists. It's about different altered frequencies and algorithms that Dr. Porges has developed. And you're listening to it with a specific headphone you don't want noise reduction because noise reduction cancels out the frequencies we're trying to work with, which are the frequencies of connection, human connection. So if you think about a drum, when a drum is taut and you hit it, it's a high sound. And if it's loose, it's a low sound. And when our eardrum, when we have trauma, for example, can have low muscle tone in our body, including our eardrums. And so our eardrums are now looser, and your hearing is attuned to lower sounds, which are things like thunder, snarls, growling, deep voices, angry sounds. And so someone may say something to you, and you say, "Why did you speak to me that way?" And they're saying, "What do you mean? I didn't speak to you in a bad way." But they're hearing it that way because one of the aspects is because that eardrum is not working properly, right? So the auditory stimulation is doing things like it's working with the vagus nerve, so as an auditory vagus nerve stimulator, and it's also working with that eardrum to help the ear hear safe sounds. That's one of the aspects of it, and deliver those cues of safety to the nervous system, so that you can now live more in a safe place, right? So basically you're listening to this modified frequencies, and it's delivered in the form of music, and you select the playlist you like. So you can listen to like Disney songs or classical music, but it's the modification of the sounds that's delivering the therapy, right?
So the trained therapist or the person delivering this, they're with the client as they're listening to these sounds, and then they're guiding them through something?
Yes, sometimes. So someone will ask, how long does it take? So it's 5 hours of music, but it could take 6 months because everyone's nervous system is different. Some people I've worked with, after 30 seconds, they're like, whoa, they take off the headphones. I'm like, okay, what happened? And they're saying they felt suddenly that their breathing got, or they were overwhelmed with emotion or something. And I said, well, that's your nervous system is telling us that it's enough for today. And other people can listen 15 minutes and they may not even notice, but that's still doing its work. So ideally you're sitting with someone, but you can be you can be in China and I can be here.
Right.
And you can be, if you're working with your child, let's say a parent and child, I will teach them what to look for, and I'm in touch with them closely, but not necessarily always sitting with them. So it depends not everyone delivers it the same way, but you want it to be a safe situation. You give them lots of information about what it could look like. You might make yourself, a nice warm room in your house where you put your special scents and your cat's your co-regulator.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to quickly thank you for stopping by and watching this content. It truly means the world to me that you're interested in creating positive change. I also want to invite you to join our amazing community. I have free events online about mindfulness, mindfulness-based stress reduction, laughter, as well as retreats that you can do from the comfort of your own home. And are you ready for this? Self-paced program that you can do about mindfulness and stress reduction. So you can join the newsletter below to stay up to date on all these goodies. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and press that button. It really helps me to keep this content going and reach out to more guests. Thank you so much again, and may you continue enjoying watching this episode. Interesting. See, there's one reason I'm asking you too. I'm really curious. I haven't experienced it myself, so I'm really curious how it works. And I'm trying to kind of compare it to things like in EMDR. So we kind of guide someone specifically, like what is the memory, what is the event, and
now it's not conscious, right?
So this is not conscious. So there's no, as EMDR is like eye movements. If it's a software, people following a dot with their eye or a finger moving across. So they're processing while connecting to the body. So what you're describing is you're not actually speaking about an event or a stressful situation or a conflict they had or a trauma or an accident or whatever. You're not talking about that, but it's just the listening to the safe and sound protocol. It on its own is just calming the nervous system.
Correct. Setting cues of safety to the nervous system. And the nervous system then starts to be able to live more in that safety place. So, for example, we all go through in a day. We can be driving our car, we hear a siren, our heart starts beating, we start breathing faster, we pull over, we're in sympathetic.
Right.
Flight, taking action, right?
Yes.
Move over. Then the car goes by. We start to settle. By the time we get to our location, we're back in sort of a peaceful place. But if we're a person who's very stressed out in general, maybe my parent died recently and we had to take care of them for a year, and we haven't been able to come down or regulate much. What happens is you might get stuck in that sympathetic for hours. So you get to work and somebody says something to you and you snap at them. You can't really focus at the meeting. And now your system is ramped up.
Right.
It's a lot harder to come down. Or if you're depressed, you go down to what they call dorsal state. And that's more like you're now, people with selective mutism live more in that state too, right? It's not able to rally, right? So what you want is your system to be able to go through this thing, because sometimes you want to be quiet and still, and sometimes you want to be active. You have to pull over or run across the street because a car is coming, but you don't want to live in that. You want to be able to come and regulate, and it should be an even flow. So safe and sound, again, is delivering those cues of safety to help sort of I don't know if I want to say retrain the nervous system, but just make it feel safe, get rid of some of that excess trauma that's had you living in either this fight, flight, or shutdown mode.
Yeah. So it's really assisting, what's amazing in the body, like, in the autonomic nervous system, like you're naming, we have both the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and they help harmonize each other, right?
Like a seesaw.
It's a seesaw. One goes up, one goes up, one goes up. And so I guess we're providing conditions, just like mindfulness or the safe sound protocol, providing conditions to support the wisdom in the body. Like, it's quite amazing. Like, it actually knows how to heal. But if we don't give it the right support, and we just flood it with stress and anxiety and rush and hurried and busy, and well, how is it going to help?
Exactly.
Yeah. This is really fascinating. I want to ask you something that I just recently been thinking about. I'm like, does that stuff? I haven't looked into it, so this is part of me learning about this. Is I went to a conference and they were talking about these vagus nerve like devices that can stimulate the vagus nerve, and I was like, what do you think of those? Is there?
Yes.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm kind of old school. I'm like, well, let's stick to just natural ways. But what if this actually helps? If there's a device that can help us with stuff.
So it's interesting. So actually, I've used a vagus nerve stimulator for several years, and it's linked to a gut protocol with a gut doctor that I worked with because my son had a lot of really severe issues, and I wanted to help him. So I discovered it that way, and then it turns out that everyone has gut issues. So it's another thing.
Yeah.
So part of his protocol includes a vagus nerve stimulator because basically a lot of times when you have these gut issues, it's an autonomic nervous system dysfunction, which means that your autonomic nervous system is not working as it should. There's some kind of breakdown. So the vagus nerve is really important to that. So vagus nerves were developed for epilepsy originally, and they were implanted in people's chests.
The device.
Yes, they're surgically implanted in people's chests, and they still do that. Actually, I have a client who has a daughter with epilepsy who just had an implanted device. So they still do that at times. It's just so it's sort of like a heart rate pacemaker.
Right, pacemaker. Yeah.
Right, but these vagus nerve stimulators are much easier to use. The one I have just clips on in what they call the concha, which is like concha is a shell in Spanish. So it's like the part. So you just clip it onto here or onto this part, and it provides a little stimulation because the vagus nerve runs right up into this area.
So you're pointing to the jaw while you're listening in the just audio. So you're pointing to the ear and to the jaw.
Yeah, the ear and then sort of into the facial area. It just sends those messages to the vagus nerve because the vagus nerve goes all the way up to that area. And it's this doctor also developed this protocol originally for concussions because when you have concussions, you also have a lot of gut issues because of the trauma.
Right.
So, so this is part of his work. There are a lot of different vagus nerve stimulators. I haven't tried any of the other ones, but this is the one that I tried. And basically for most people, it's very easy. You don't really notice it. It's like putting on, it's like putting on your headphones or whatever.
That's interesting. Yeah. And how long do you put it on to get benefits, I guess?
Well, this is the thing. Depending on the device, they're all different, right? And I don't know a lot of the other ones, but this one for children, for example, is only 5 minutes a day. And it's preset to 10 volts, his specific system. For adults with more intense issues like concussion or something, he will do it up to 2 hours a day. But again, you can just do it while you're on your computer. You don't even really notice it. It's plugged into your phone.
So it's not, you can, I see what you mean. Yeah, you can do what you're doing if you're in the computer.
And I think
interesting.
Although I love the idea of, you can do all these exercises for your vagus nerves. To be honest, I think when you really need vagus nerve stimulation, I don't know how much those help. Yeah. I think it's fine for the normal person who doesn't really need a lot of assistance. But I think if you have like more severe autonomic dysfunction for whatever reason, probably you need direct stimulation. That's
interesting. Yeah, it needs more than that. Yeah, but here's one approach. And, if someone wants to learn about, I guess they can, research vagus nerve devices. Is that what they're called? Stimulators or?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're actually called transcutaneous vagal nerve stimulators because it's on the skin, right? TVNS.
Very good.
He has his own device, and it never comes up on when you do a search. He's not one of these people that's like always trying to sell his products. So his name is Dr. Nemechek.
Ah, interesting. And what part of the world is he in?
He's in Arizona.
Arizona, okay.
Yeah, and he's very, like, he has a great YouTube channel. He's a super direct, down to earth, very honest. Like, if he's not happy with the results, he'd say, I'm not happy with how this is going. We need to do more. I'm going to have to spend more time researching this. We're going to try more things. He doesn't, have all the answers, and he's the first one to let you know that.
Yeah.
About him. Yeah.
Wow, give me an idea. I might reach out to him, get him on the podcast. I'd love to learn more about
he's amazing. I'd love to see him out there more, actually.
Yeah. So many different things. And, the other thing that I heard about, a lot of people struggle with headaches or migraines. And I heard about that as well, the connection with vagus nerve and these devices that can help. And again, I haven't looked at research. So I don't know, have you heard about that in terms of
migraines? Yeah, I personally don't know anyone who's used, for example, his device specifically for migraines, but I do read about their specific ones that come up when you search for them for migraines. I recommend it to a friend of mine who has migraines, but she didn't try it, so I don't know whether it's effective or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, friends, stay tuned. I'm going to reach out to this person, and hopefully we'll connect, and you'll hear more about this vagus nerve stimulators and devices. Yeah, really interesting. So, wow. Time really flew by, and I have so many things, and I know you send me different wonderful visuals that we've already put on. But one of the things you send is this clock. And can you speak about what that is and what does it indicate? Then I'll share my results. So maybe I'll get you to speak a little bit about what is this clock, and we'll put it on the screen in a moment.
So anyone who has had a family member with dementia or is curious about dementia will know that clocks testing is one of the things they use to determine cognition, like whether you're declining. They'll ask someone to draw a clock. Did you know that? I think
drawing the clock itself. Yeah,
draw a clock face.
Yeah.
And you'll see sometimes people don't put the numbers in the right place. They'll put all the numbers on one side. They'll ask them to draw a specific time, and this, it's not very accurate because it has to do with the region of the brain that it's stimulating, that's declining.
Yeah.
So this cognitive program that I worked in, one of the most popular exercises is what you call this clocks exercise, which is actually symbol relations, and it's an area that's sort of this part of your brain that's the 3 different lobes, and it's responsible for a lot of reasoning, conceptual understanding, cause and effect kinds of things. So people who work on this exercise improve their ability for processing speed and reasoning and all these things.
Interesting.
And people, for example, people who can't tie their shoes, have never been able to learn to tie their shoes. I had a 42-year-old suddenly be able to learn to tie her shoes because it's actually a conceptual thing. It's not a fine motor. I mean, it's partly fine motor, but that's not why they can't do it.
Interesting.
Yes. And so clocks, so sometimes people say, well, why would I spend all this money to read a clock? Well, this is a very basic clock face. It has 2 hands. And if you look at the 2 hands, you'll see they're both the same length. It's called equal length level. So then you have to decide, well, what time is it? How do you determine what time it is?
So let's we'll put it up, and maybe we'll give a moment if someone is watching on YouTube for the visual. If you're listening to this on
sorry, I was going to
audio, you can always hop on YouTube and take a look at it. And what number do you see? So I'll share my number in a moment. So I'm wondering for everyone, take a look. What number do you see on the clock?
Okay,
this is not a.
They asked you what time it was. What would you say?
Okay. So I have my time. Maybe we'll give everyone another moment.
And how do you determine
like a quiz? This feels like a quiz all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, it is a brain workout. And when you work on this, you're getting lots and lots of clock faces coming at you very quickly. You have to do them faster and faster to be able to figure out all these things. And they add hands up, 10 hands eventually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, the time that I see is...
Okay, so what do you see?
I see 3:56.
You see 356. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
tell me, do you have a
So
reasoning
four.
behind it?
Yeah, I somehow assumed the hand that's pointing close to the 4 is the shorter hand. For somehow I assumed that's the shorter hand, and the hand that's pointing to past the 11, that's the longer hand. So then I thought, okay, it's
Look,
356.
I'm going to tell you, you're wrong.
Oh no!
You're wrong. Okay. No, it's very complicated. Clocks are very complicated. And this is
Yeah,
interesting. I sometimes get parents come in, and the father would be an engineer, and he'd be like, what's this clock thing? And then when I
yeah,
explained it, he'd be like, oh, this is really interesting. So if you're looking at like the hand that's between the 3 and the 4, you have the right
yes.
idea. The hand moves between 3 and 4. Let's say if you have an if then this then that, right? So
Right.
if it's 3 o'clock, then it's a little bit past the halfway point. Let's say it's closer to the 4, so that it should be
Yes.
about 3 what? And how do we know exactly? So each of these ticks, these lines,
Yeah.
those spaces in between represent 12 minutes. Because 3 to 4 is 60 minutes divided by 5 means each of these spaces represents 12 minutes. So we can actually tell very specifically 12, 24, 36, 37-ish. So if it's 3 o'clock and the hand has moved to that spot, it would be about 3:37.
I
And if that were the
see.
case, then the other hand should be at the 37th minute. But it's not. So now we have to reason the other way. And as we're imagining this, we're going to imagine that this part of our brain is going, okay, this is hard work, right?
Yeah, that part of my brain got confused.
Yeah, yes. And so now we look at the other hand and we say, okay, so if this is the hour hand and it's between 11 and 12, then it's 11 something.
Yeah.
So it's 11, it's not 11:12, it's halfway between 12 and 24.
11 and
So,
24?
well, because the first space is 12 and the next space is 24, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60.
Uh-huh. I see what you mean. Got it.
So it's about 12:18 because halfway between 12 and 24 is 18 minutes. It gets very complicated. It took me a
Wow.
while to learn this. So it's saying if this is the hour hand, it's 11:18. And we look at the other hand, which would then be the minute hand, and it's on the 18th minute. So it's 11:18.
Oh, wow. Eh, So what does it mean if someone did like me, got it as like a 356? There's a
Well, in this case, you haven't learned yet what these things represent. And of course, we don't read a clock this way. We read it with a shorthand. We use our vision to help us. But the point about a clock is they're actually very complicated. And there's lots of layered information as you begin to add hands. So if you're working on 2 hands, you would work on 1 hand first, and you might just work on the 3 and determine in the hour between 3 and 4, if it's at that place, what does that mean? What does it represent, right? So
I see. So it
then you
becomes
would
a
add
tool to
beforehand.
learn. Right.
But
So this is not just like a test, it's done, it's over. It's like a tool someone now begins to learn and think about numbers and think about movement of both these handles
it's
and their
always about not so much that we're learning to read a clock, but about what part of the brain are we stimulating and what
right.
that part of the brain is responsible for. So
Wow.
the woman who developed this, she had Barbara Arrowsmith Young, and she has her own story and her own TED Talk, and she has this program all over the world, the Arrowsmith program. And she had trouble with logic and reasoning, and she could never read a clock. And she was getting her master's degree, and she was having to study 4 times longer than everyone else because it was so complicated for her. And she thought, well, if I can stimulate my brain, maybe I can do this, based on some research that she had read, that if you stimulate your brain, these things happen. And one of the things she read was that it's called The Man with a Shattered World. It's written by a neuroscientist way back when. A man had shrapnel in his brain, and when she read about him, she says, I don't have shrapnel in my brain, but it was like in that area that he had shrapnel. But what they were describing about his difficulties were the difficulties that she had.
Oh, wow.
So she said, well, if I could stimulate that part of my brain somehow, if I could figure out how to do that, maybe I can improve my difficulties. And she did. And that's how she started to develop her program, because she literally changed her brain, not just with this program, but she developed this for herself. She did flashcards because it was before we had computers.
Yeah.
And she added 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 hands, 6 hands, how it goes, 8 hands. And then actually they didn't do 10 hands until a few years ago. And she realized that she was making this, again, connecting this area, making it stronger, making more connections, more gray matter. So changing its ability.
It's quite interesting because even as you're talking about it and you were describing it, I can feel my brain working. Like I can feel like steam coming out of my ears. And I'm like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, well,
exactly.
I'm trying to stay with you. And, I wonder if some of the listeners feeling the same way. Like, wow, I think I got lost there. Well, of course, because it's new information, and when there's learning, there's formation of new connections in the brain.
Yes, and of course, when you're teaching it, you don't teach it really super quickly.
Right. Yes.
It could take, someone might spend a week every day for 40 minutes trying to understand the concepts behind how you would read equal length. Right.
Yes, but something as when it looks so simple, it just looks like a clock. But wow, when you unpacked it, like what a tool to actually stimulate the brain. And here's neuroplasticity. Exactly. You're forming stimulating regions in the brain. You're working the brain, and this is what's hopeful. So it's not about like passing a test, but this is so good. I so appreciate you bringing this up. I feel like I gained a couple of brain cells.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is so enjoyable. I know we're just at the end of this conversation, but I wanted to ask you 2 more things, if it's okay. One of them is, the name of this podcast is Pause to Elevate. And I'm wondering, what does pause to elevate mean to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. Of course, when we worked on mindfulness in the MBSR course, you talk about pausing before you respond, right? So it's so your ability to be able to do that. So what do you need for that? So for me, I'm looking at improving ability, right?
Yes.
So to be able to pause before you respond or react, you don't want to react, you want to respond mindfully. You actually have to have executive function. You have to have impulse control, right? So executive function, what is that? It's what I always say, it's what a good executive should be able to do. If you think about a good executive in a company, let's say, they should be able to plan, strategize, focus, pay attention, find the main idea, all these different things. And that part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex, which is the last part of our brain to develop in our late 20s, right?
Right. And you're pointing at the forehead region, yeah?
Yes, the prefrontal cortex. That's our executive function. So to be able to, and when we're using, again, our prefrontal cortex is a highest form of cognition, which is elevating. You're elevating to the highest ability level. Mm-hmm. But you can't do that. You can't pause and reflect before you respond if you don't have good executive function. And so a lot of people who say they have been diagnosed with ADHD or things like that, a lot of times it's because they have poor executive function, which can be improved upon with some of these methods. And then when they're able to improve those things, they no longer have problems with attention. And they can do things like not be so impulsive and reflect. And Dr. Daniel Siegel has this hand thing. You know Dr. Daniel Siegel's work? And he talks about this is your brain, this is your inner brain.
Yes, you're making a tight fist. Yeah,
you're making a tight fist.
The hand model of the brain.
Inside the brain is the area that's more the emotional part, the amygdala. And when you're stressed out, it sends a lot of stress hormones and disconnects with your prefrontal cortex. He calls it flipping your lid. So
yes,
you
fingers point to the ceiling.
Yeah,
open your hand.
So you no longer, so that emotional center cannot talk to that higher level, elevated part of your brain. So you can't pause to reflect. So you might be in an angry conversation and just be saying stuff. And afterwards you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I hadn't said that. But in the moment, your stress hormones and everything, your anxiety made it very difficult for you to think at that higher level. So pausing to use your higher level, I think about it that way too, right?
Yes, it kind of brings us back online. We kind of go offline, right? And kind of brings it back online. This has been so enjoyable, so many different facets, and I so appreciate all your expertise and your deep love for this work. Like, clearly, it's something that you're deeply passionate about. I'm wondering, anything else you want the listeners to know? Any final words on top of, I'll put the link to your website. Maybe you can say the link to what is your website so we can hear it.
It's
And
my
I'll put
initial A, Dennison at ADennisonconsulting.com. Sorry,
.com.
ADennisonconsulting.com. Yeah.
I'll put that in the show notes and the link to that.
Yeah.
Anything else you want listeners to know as we come to an end?
I think just basically that the fact that the brain is plastic, it has that ability to change throughout life, is so hopeful. And we know we can improve things like anxiety, depression, cognition, all these different things, all sorts of different kinds of regulation. And it's just about knowing what it is we need to do. And we can do these. There's so many different non-invasive approaches. And it's not that medication is never useful. There are times when medication is absolutely necessary. But I always like to say, let's look at some other non-invasive approaches first that we know are not going to, have any side effects, basically, except for better things.
Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing this expertise and your love for this. And I want to thank all the listeners for listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, for watching. Please feel free to share this, a neighbor, a friend, a colleague, a family member, whoever it is you feel it can benefit. Help us spread this work. If you have subscribed, thank you so much. If you haven't, please do so. It helps me keep sharing this work. Thanks again, everyone. May your moments be filled with ease, and may you be present in as many of them. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this content, check out what's coming up next right over here. Thank you.